The old hangar at Riverside Airfield hadn't seen much excitement in years. Nestled on the outskirts of a sleepy coastal town, it was the kind of place where time seemed to move slower than the rest of the world. That's exactly why Finn Blackwood liked it. The 30-year-old mechanic had always preferred the company of engines to people, finding peace in the rhythmic sound of tools against metal and the satisfaction of bringing broken things back to life. Tonight was different. The autumn air carried an unusual electricity, making the hair on Finn's arms stand on end as he worked on an old Cessna's engine. The clock on the wall showed 2:37 a.m., but sleep was the last thing on his mind. Something felt off, like the calm before a storm. The first sign came as a low vibration in the concrete floor. Finn might have dismissed it as fatigue playing tricks on his mind, but the coffee mug on his workbench began to tremble, ripples forming in the dark liquid. The vibration grew stronger, accompanied by a deep hum that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Finn stepped outside the hangar, his eyes scanning the star-studded sky. What he saw defied explanation. A vessel, unlike anything human-made, was descending toward the airfield. It moved with impossible grace, its hull shimmering with an otherworldly iridescence that reminded him of mother of pearl. The craft was bleeding light from its port side, leaving a trail of luminescent particles in its wake. As it touched down, the ground beneath Finn's feet shuddered. Steam hissed from various points along the vessel's hull, and what he assumed was the main hatch opened with a soft pneumatic whisper. Two figures emerged, their movements suggesting injury or exhaustion. Finn's first instinct was to run, to call someone, anyone. But curiosity and a lifetime of fixing broken things rooted him to the spot. The figures approached, and the airfield's floodlights revealed their clearly non-human nature. They were tall, with skin that seemed to shift colors like the northern lights. Their eyes were large and facete, reflecting light like diamonds. "Please," the taller one spoke, her voice carrying an ethereal quality that made Finn's spine tingle. "Our ship, we need help." The shorter one stepped forward, supporting her companion. "I am Raven, and this is Solaris. We've traveled far, but our quantum drive is failing. Without repairs, She glanced nervously at the sky. "We won't survive what's coming." Finn looked between them and their damaged ship, his mind racing. This was far beyond anything he'd ever worked on, but the engineer in him was already analyzing the visible damage, noting the patterns of energy discharge, the way the hull plates aligned. "I'm Finn," he said, surprised by the steadiness in his voice. "I'm a mechanic, but I've never seen technology like this. What makes you think I can help?" Solaris straightened, her iridescent skin pulsing with what might have been pain or urgency. "Because you have something we lack, human intuition. Our systems are based on universal principles of physics. If you can understand basic engineering, you can understand our ship." "And if I manage to fix it?" Finn asked, already walking toward the vessel, his toolbox in hand. "Then name your price," Raven replied. "Anything within our power to grant will be yours." The interior of the ship was a marvel of engineering that made Finn's heart race. Organic curves melded with crystalline structures, creating a space that felt alive. The damaged drive system pulsed with a failing light, its rhythm irregular like a faltering heartbeat. As Finn worked, Raven and Solaris explained their situation in hushed tones. They were scouts from a civilization called the Astari, searching for allies among emerging spacefaring races. Their people were locked in a desperate struggle against the Nexus, A machine civilization intent on optimizing all organic life through forced cybernetic evolution. Hours passed like minutes as Finn immersed himself in the repair work. The technology was advanced, but the underlying principles were familiar enough. Every machine, he discovered, had a kind of logic to it, a pattern that could be understood if you looked hard enough. Dawn was approaching when Finn finally closed the access panel on the quantum drive. The ship's systems hummed with renewed energy, its lights steady and strong. Raven and Solaris exchanged looks of relief and amazement. "You've done it," Solaris breathed, her skin shimmering with what Finn now recognized as joy. "Name your price, Finn Blackwood. What do you desire? Knowledge? Wealth? Technology?" Finn wiped his hands on a rag, considering the question. He could ask for anything: solutions to humanity's greatest problems, personal riches beyond imagination, or technological advances that would revolutionize Earth's development. But as he looked at the two aliens, saw the weight of their struggle in their otherworldly eyes, he knew what he wanted. "Take me with you," he said simply. "I want to help. Whatever you are fighting against, whatever's coming, you'll need someone who can think differently, who can fix things in ways your people might not expect." The aliens were silent for a long moment, communicating through subtle changes in their skin's luminescence. Finally, Raven spoke. "You would leave your world behind? Everything you know?" Finn gestured to the empty hangar, to the quiet life he'd built around broken machines and solitude. "I've spent my whole life fixing things, but I've never felt like I was part of something bigger. This is my chance." Before they could respond, a warning signal pulsed through the ship's systems. Solaris rushed to a control panel, her movements urgent. "They've found us. Nexus scouts, entering the atmosphere." "How many?" Raven demanded. "3 ships, heavy combat class." Finn felt adrenaline surge through his system. "Then we better make this quick. Yes or no, am I coming with you?" Raven and Solaris exchanged one final look before nodding in unison. "Welcome aboard, Engineer Blackwood," Solaris said, a hint of a smile in her melodic voice. "Now, let's see if you can help us stay alive long enough to make this partnership official." As the ship lifted off, leaving the only home Finn had ever known behind, he felt no regret. The quiet life he'd built had been a holding pattern, a way of existing without truly living. Now, as the first rays of dawn painted the sky in brilliant colors, he was finally embarking on the adventure he'd always dreamed of. Little did he know, this was only the beginning of a journey that would challenge everything he thought he knew about himself, about humanity, and about the true nature of the universe itself. Space was nothing like Finn had imagined. As their ship accelerated beyond Earth's atmosphere, the blackness outside wasn't empty at all, it was alive with colors and patterns his human eyes had never been meant to see. The quantum drive he'd repaired bent reality around them, creating a cocoon of distorted spacetime that carried them faster than light. 3 pursuit vessels, maintaining distance, Raven announced from her position at the ship's primary control interface. Her fingers danced across crystalline surfaces that responded to her touch with pulses of light. "They're being cautious after our last encounter." Finn studied the tactical display, which showed the Nexus ships as ominous red signatures trailing their position. The vessels were larger than the Astari scout ship, their designs angular and aggressive, lacking the organic beauty of his new ally's craft. "Why aren't they attacking?" "They want to track us," Solaris explained, her skin rippling with patterns that Finn was learning to recognize as concern. The Nexus operates like a hive mind. Every scout feeds information back to their collective consciousness. They're probably trying to figure out why we stopped on Earth. Speaking of which, Finn turned to face both aliens. I think it's time you told me everything. What exactly are we running from, and what's so important that the Nexus would send 3 warships to chase down a scout vessel? Raven and Solaris exchanged looks, having one of their silent conversations through subtle changes in their bioluminescence. Finally, Solaris nodded and pressed her palm to a nearby wall. A section of the ship's interior transformed, becoming transparent and revealing a holographic display of a distant star system. "This is Astari Prime," she said, her voice carrying a note of longing. "Our homeworld. For millennia, our civilization has been the guardians of biological evolution in this sector of the galaxy. We believe that life, in all its chaotic and diverse forms, is sacred." The display shifted, showing mechanical constructs consuming entire planets. "The Nexus arrived in our galaxy 3 centuries ago. They are not evil in the way you might understand it, they simply believe that organic life is inefficient, prone to error. Their solution is to optimize every species they encounter, forcibly converting biological matter into mechanical forms that can be integrated into their collective. We've been fighting them ever since," Raven continued, her voice hard. "But recently, we discovered something that changed everything." "Show him, Solaris." The hologram changed again, displaying complex mathematical equations and what appeared to be genetic sequences. Finn couldn't understand the symbols, but he could sense their importance from the way both aliens tensed as they appeared. "We found a way to break their connection to the collective," Solaris explained. "A virus, but not one that attacks machines or organic matter. It targets the quantum entanglement that allows the Nexus to maintain its hive mind. If deployed successfully, it would free billions of converted beings from their control." Finn whistled low. "No wonder they're chasing you so hard. But why come to Earth? Why risk exposing yourselves to find a human mechanic?" "Because the virus isn't complete," Raven admitted. "Our scientists designed it to be perfect, predictable, which is exactly what the Nexus expects. We need something they won't anticipate. Human ingenuity, human chaos. The very qualities they dismiss as flaws could be the key to completing our weapon." Before Finn could respond, alarms blared through the ship. The tactical display flashed urgently as new signatures appeared ahead of them. "More Nexus vessels," Raven reported grimly. "They're trying to box us in." Finn's mind raced, recalling everything he'd learned about the ship's systems during his repairs. "The quantum drive, you said it bends spacetime around us. Could we use that defensively?" Solaris frowned. "The drive isn't designed for combat maneuvers. Any miscalculation could tear the ship apart." "But it's possible?" "Theoretically, yes, but..." "Then let me try something." Finn moved to the engineering station, his fingers finding familiar patterns in the alien controls. "You wanted human chaos. Well, you're about to get it." What followed was either brilliant improvisation or sheer madness, possibly both. Finn rerouted power from non-essential systems, creating a feedback loop in the quantum drive that caused their wake to become unstable. The pursuing Nexus ships, designed to predict and counter normal tactics, found their sensors overwhelmed by the chaotic quantum fluctuations. "Hard turn, now," Finn shouted, and Raven responded instantly, sending their ship into a spiral that would have been suicidal under normal circumstances. But the quantum turbulence they'd generated created a momentary blind spot, allowing them to slip past the Nexus blockade. As they accelerated away from danger, Finn noticed Raven and Solaris staring at him with expressions he couldn't quite read. "What?" he asked, suddenly self-conscious. "Did I break something important?" "No," Solaris said slowly, her skin pulsing with what might have been amusement or amazement. "You just proved why we were right to find you. No Astari would have thought to use the quantum drive that way. It goes against all our training, all our protocols." "That's what scares the Nexus about organic life," Raven added. "Our ability to innovate, to break rules, to find solutions that shouldn't work but somehow do. And humans." She gave Finn what he thought might be a smile. "Humans excel at that kind of beautiful chaos." The moment was interrupted by a new alert from the ship's systems. "We're approaching the rendezvous coordinates," Solaris announced. "The resistance base is hidden in an asteroid field at the edge of the Carina Nebula. We should be safe there, at least long enough to plan our next move." As their ship decelerated toward their destination, Finn watched the spectacular colors of the nebula fill their view. Less than 24 hours ago, he had been fixing small planes in a quiet hangar on Earth. Now he was light years from home, helping to fight a war against machine gods who wanted to optimize all organic life. "Having second thoughts?" Raven asked quietly, noticing his expression. Finn shook his head, a smile tugging at his lips. "Just wondering what other impossible things we're going to do today. With you aboard." Solaris chimed in, her skin flickering with what Finn was learning to recognize as humor. "I have a feeling impossible is going to become a regular part of our vocabulary." As they approached the hidden base, Finn couldn't help but feel that he'd found something he'd been searching for his entire life without knowing it, not just adventure, but purpose. The universe was vast and full of wonders, but it was also in danger from forces that would eliminate everything that made it beautiful and unpredictable. And somehow, a mechanic from Earth had become part of the resistance fighting to preserve that chaos, that precious imperfection that made life worth living. Whatever came next, Finn knew he was exactly where he needed to be. The resistance base was a marvel of engineering and desperation. Carved into a massive asteroid, its corridors wound through the rock like veins, housing thousands of refugees from dozens of species. As Finn followed Raven and Solaris through the crowded passages, he couldn't help but stare at the diversity of life around him, beings of light and shadow, crystalline entities that chimed as they moved, and creatures that seemed to exist in more dimensions than his human mind could process. "The last free assembly," Solaris explained, noting his wonder. "Every being here has lost something to the Nexus. Their homes, their families, sometimes even parts of themselves. But they refuse to submit to optimization. They arrived at what appeared to be a command center, where a group of alien leaders was gathered around a holographic display of the galaxy. At their approach, a tall figure turned, and Finn had to suppress a gasp. The being before them appeared to be made of living starlight, its form barely contained within a translucent exoskeleton. "Welcome back, Scouts," the being said, its voice resonating directly in Finn's mind. "I see you've brought interesting company." "Hi, Commander Astrid," Raven bowed slightly. "This is Finn Blackwood, a human engineer. He's already proven invaluable to our cause." The commander's gaze fell on Finn, and he felt as though his entire existence was being evaluated in an instant. "A human? Fascinating." Your species is still centuries from achieving faster than light travel, yet here you stand, having already mastered aspects of our technology that should be beyond your comprehension. I just understand machines, Finn said modestly. The principles aren't so different once you get past the advanced materials and quantum mechanics. Perhaps that is exactly what we need, Astrid mused. Solaris, show him what we've discovered. Solaris led Finn to a separate chamber filled with complex equipment. At its center was a cylinder containing what appeared to be a swirling mass of liquid light. This is the virus prototype, she explained. It works, but not consistently. The Nexus adapts too quickly, finding patterns in our programming and counteracting them. Finn studied the containment systems, noting how they regulated the quantum state of the virus. You are thinking too linearly, he said after a moment. Look, in engineering, sometimes the best solution isn't the most elegant one. Sometimes you need redundancy, imperfection, controlled chaos. He spent the next several hours working with Solaris, introducing elements of randomness into the virus's code structure. It went against everything the Astari believed about perfect design, but slowly, the simulation results began to improve. Their work was interrupted by blaring alarms. The entire base shuddered, and emergency lights pulsed through the corridors. Raven burst into the lab, her skin flashing with urgent patterns. They found us. A Nexus warfleet just emerged from quantum space. Impossible, Solaris breathed. Our shielding was compromised, a new voice said. They turned to see a humanoid figure in the doorway, its skin covered in metallic scales. The Nexus says hello. Before anyone could react, the figure raised its arm, which transformed into a weapon. Finn moved purely on instinct, tackling Solaris as energy burst scorched the wall behind them. Raven's response was immediate and lethal, a beam of concentrated light that pierced the infiltrator's chest. The being fell, its form flickering between organic and mechanical as its systems failed. Too late, it gurgled, its voice distorting. The optimization begins. Throughout the base, similar scenes were playing out. Hidden infiltrators revealed themselves, and the once secure heaven descended into chaos. Finn found himself running through corridors with Raven and Solaris, helping evacuate civilians while fighting off waves of Nexus converts. The virus, Solaris gasped as they reached the lab again. We can't let them get it. We won't, Finn said, quickly gathering the essential components. But we are not leaving it behind either. I have an idea. Using his knowledge of the base's systems, Finn rigged an improvised transport container for the virus prototype. As they fought their way to their ship, he saw the true horror of what they were fighting against. Nexus forces weren't just killing, they were converting. Each fallen defender rose again, their bodies twisting as nanomachines rebuilt them into servants of the collective. They reached the hangar just as High Commander Astrid arrived with a group of survivors. Go, the Starlight being commanded. The virus is our only hope now. We'll hold them here. Commander, Raven protested, but Astrid's form flared with brilliant light. That's an order, Scout. Find a way to finish what we started. Remember, they can take our worlds, our bodies, but they cannot take our will to remain free. As their ship lifted off, Finn watched through the viewport as Astrid and the remaining defenders engaged a wave of Nexus forces. The commander's light grew blindingly bright, and then, in a final act of defiance, they detonated themselves, taking out a massive section of the base and the enemy forces with it. Where do we go now? Finn asked softly as they fled into quantum space. They'll be hunting us harder than ever. Solaris, her skin dim with grief, managed a flicker of determination. We have the virus prototype, and thanks to your modifications, it's more promising than ever. We need to find somewhere we can work on it safely, somewhere even the Nexus wouldn't think to look. I might know a place, Finn said slowly, an idea forming. It's primitive by your standards, has minimal technological signature, and the Nexus probably considers it too backward to bother with yet. Raven's eyes widened as she realized what he was suggesting. Earth? That's incredibly risky for us and your planet. Maybe, Finn agreed. But sometimes the best hiding place is the one that seems too obvious. Besides, he managed a grim smile. I know a quiet little hangar where we can work in peace. Assuming it's still standing. As they plotted their course back to Earth, Finn felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. The resistance base was gone, countless lives lost or wars converted. But they had the virus, they had hope, and most importantly, they had each other. Sometimes, he was learning, that was enough to change the universe. What he didn't know was that their return to Earth would set in motion events that would either save organic life throughout the galaxy or doom it forever. The old hangar at Riverside Airfield looked exactly as Finn had left it, though it felt like a lifetime had passed rather than just a few weeks. Their ship touched down under the cover of darkness, its advanced cloaking systems ensuring they remained undetected. The coffee mug still sat on his workbench, a thin film of mold now floating on its surface, a small reminder of the ordinary life he'd left behind. Your primitive technology might actually work in our favor, Raven observed as they set up their equipment. The Nexus monitors quantum signatures, energy fluctuations. They're looking for advanced civilizations. But here. She gestured at the old planes and rusty tools. We're hiding in plain sight. Finn had converted his workshop into a makeshift laboratory. The virus prototype glowed softly in its containment unit, while scattered around it were parts cannibalized from their ship's non-essential systems. He and Solaris worked tirelessly, integrating human unpredictability into the virus's core programming. It's beautiful, Solaris murmured one night, her skin shimmering with complex patterns as she studied their work. The way human chaos and Asteri precision complement each other. Like a dance between order and entropy. Finn looked up from his calculations, struck by the way the virus's light played across her iridescent features. Over the weeks, he'd grown increasingly aware of a connection forming between them, something that transcended species and maybe even logic itself. Sometimes the most beautiful things in the universe are the ones that shouldn't work but do anyway. Their moment was interrupted by Raven's urgent return from her perimeter check. We have a problem, she announced, her skin pulsing with alarm patterns. I've detected unusual activity in the nearby town. Energy signatures that shouldn't exist on Earth. The Nexus? Finn asked, already moving to secure their work. No, Raven's expression was grim. Worse. I think some of your people have noticed us. Within hours, their fears were confirmed. Black vehicles began appearing on the roads around the airfield, maintaining their distance but definitely watching. Men in dark suits were spotted in town, asking questions about strange lights and unusual occurrences. Your world's governments, Solaris said, monitoring their movements through the ship's sensors. They must have detected something during our quantum jumps. We're not as invisible as we thought. This complicates everything, Finn muttered, pacing the hangar. If they find you, best case scenario, you end up in some secret facility being studied. Worst case. We can't leave, Raven interjected. The virus is too close to completion. 2 more days, maybe 3, and we'll have something that could end this war. The decision was taken out of their hands the next morning. Finn was making adjustments to the containment unit when he heard vehicles approaching. Lots of them. Multiple aircraft approaching as well, Solaris reported, her voice tense. Your military is mobilizing. We need to go, now, Raven urged, already powering up the ship's systems. But Finn stood frozen, a terrible realization washing over him. They'll never stop looking, he said quietly. Once they know aliens exist, they'll tear the world apart trying to find you. And eventually, that attention will draw the Nexus here ahead of schedule. What are you suggesting? Solaris asked, though her dimming skin suggested she already knew. I have to stay behind, Finn said, his voice steady despite the pain in his chest. Give myself up, tell them I'm a crazy inventor who was experimenting with lights and strange equipment. A distraction while you escape. No. Solaris moved toward him, her phone flickering with distress. We need you. I need you. The virus is almost complete, Finn argued. You know how to finish it. And this way, Earth stays off everyone's radar for a little longer. He managed a smile. Sometimes the best solutions aren't the most elegant ones, remember? The sound of helicopters was getting closer. Raven looked between them, her tactical mind warring with her emotions. He's right, she finally said. It's the only way to protect both the mission and this world. Solaris' skin had gone almost completely dark, a sign of deep emotional pain that Finn had never seen before. There has to be another way. Hey, Finn stepped closer to her, reaching out to touch her luminescent skin for the first time. It felt like touching sunlight. Remember what Commander Astrid said. They can take our worlds, our bodies, but they cannot take our will to remain free. This is my choice. The next few minutes were a blur of activity. Finn helped them load the vital equipment onto the ship, keeping only enough obviously human technology to support his cover story. As the authorities surrounded the hangar, he prepared himself for what was to come. When you finish the virus, he told them, come back for me. I'll be waiting. Solaris touched his face, and for a moment, Finn felt a connection so profound it brought tears to his eyes. No words were needed. Then she and Raven were gone, their ship cloaked and racing for the stars while Finn stepped out of the hangar with his hands raised. As he was surrounded by armed soldiers and stern-faced agents, Finn kept his expression neutral. Let them think him an eccentric inventor, a harmless dreamer who would been experimenting with strange lights and machinery. He could handle whatever came next, knowing that somewhere above, the two beings he'd grown to care for more than his own world were carrying the hope of the galaxy with them. What he didn't know was that his sacrifice had set in motion events that would reshape not just Earth's future, but the very nature of the war against the Nexus. Because sometimes the greatest victories come not from grand battles or superior technology, but from simple acts of sacrifice and love that even the most advanced machine intelligence could never comprehend. 6 months in a secret government facility had given Finn plenty of time to think. Between endless interrogations and supervised experiments designed to replicate his supposed inventions, he'd maintained his cover story with unwavering patience. The officials were convinced he was either a genius or a madman, possibly both, but they hadn't gotten any closer to the truth. Every night, he looked at the stars through his tiny window, wondering if Solaris and Raven had succeeded, if the virus was complete. He tried not to think about the way Solaris' skin had darkened with grief at their parting, or how the touch of her hand still lingered on his face like a phantom caress. The first sign that everything was about to change came in the form of unusual solar activity. The facility's scientists were baffled by the readings, massive energy fluctuations that didn't match any known stellar phenomena. But Finn recognized the patterns. The Nexus had arrived. Within days, the first ships appeared in Earth's orbit, their presence impossible to hide from the public. Panic erupted globally as humanity faced the reality of advanced alien life. But these weren't the allies Finn had hoped would return for him, these were the harbingers of optimization. The facility where Finn was held became a hive of frantic activity. Military leaders and scientists rushed to formulate a defense strategy, but Finn knew Earth's weapons would be useless against Nexus technology. He was about to break his silence, to tell them everything he knew, when the lights went out. In the darkness, a familiar soft glow appeared outside his window. Moments later, the reinforced glass simply dissolved. "Miss me?" Raven asked, crouching on the windowsill with a smile in her voice. "What took you so long?" Finn grinned, already moving toward her. "Oh, just had to perfect a virus that could save the galaxy, gather allies, and plan an invasion. The usual." She helped him out onto a gravity platform where Solaris was waiting. The reunion with Solaris was electric. Her skin blazed with patterns of joy and relief as she pulled him close. "We did it," she whispered. "The virus works. But we need your help for what comes next." As they ascended toward their cloaked ship, Finn saw the scale of what was happening. Nexus ships filled the sky, but they weren't alone. A vast fleet of organic vessels hung in high orbit, the assembled remnants of every resistance force in the galaxy. "The Nexus thinks they're here to optimize another primitive world," Raven explained as they boarded. "They've committed massive resources to this operation. Their entire central consciousness has joined the fleet to personally oversee Earth's conversion. Which makes this our perfect chance," Finn realized. "They've concentrated their consciousness in one place." "Exactly," Solaris confirmed. "But we need every advantage we can get. Including." She gestured to a modified section of their ship's engineering bay. Finn's eyes widened. They had integrated parts of Earth's primitive technology into their systems, analog backup controls, mechanical failsafes, and most surprisingly, an old radio transmitter. Sometimes the simplest solutions, he began, are the most effective, Solaris finished. "The virus works, but we needed a way to transmit it that the Nexus wouldn't expect. Their quantum defenses are impenetrable, but they completely ignore radio waves, technology they consider too primitive to be a threat." The plan was audacious. While the Resistance fleet engaged the Nexus ships in what appeared to be a desperate defense of Earth, their ship would slip through the chaos. The modified radio transmitter, combined with the quantum properties of the virus, would allow them to broadcast it directly into the Nexus's central consciousness. "One problem," Finn pointed out as they went over the details. "A transmission that powerful will fry our ship's systems. It's a one-way trip." "We know," Raven said quietly. That's why most of the crew already evacuated. We're the only ones crazy enough to try this. The battle that followed was unlike anything Earth had ever witnessed. The Resistance fleet fought with desperate courage, their ships dancing between Nexus energy beams in maneuvers that seemed to defy physics. On the ground, humanity watched in awe and terror as their sky became a canvas for war. Their ship dove through the chaos, taking advantage of the Nexus's dismissal of their seemingly primitive vessel. They had one shot at this, one chance to get close enough for the transmission to work. Multiple ships on R6. Raven called out as they approached their target point. They'd finally been noticed. The transmitter needs 30 more seconds to power up, Solaris reported, her hands flying over the controls. We don't have 30 seconds, Finn muttered, studying their failing shields. Then he saw it, a crazy possibility, the kind that only a human might consider. Raven, kill the engines. What? Trust me. Cut all power except life support and the transmitter. She did, and their ship began to tumble, appearing to all sensors like a piece of battle debris. The Nexus ships passed them by, focusing on more obvious threats. 10 seconds, Solaris counted down as they drifted closer to the massive Nexus command ship. Their vessel's systems were already starting to fail from the power drain. 5 seconds. The hull creaked ominously. Now, Finn slammed the transmission control, and for a moment, everything seemed to stop. A pulse of energy rippled out from their ship, carrying the virus on waves of primitive radio signals that sliced through the Nexus's quantum defenses like they weren't even there. The effect was immediate and spectacular. The massive Nexus ships began to drift, their perfect coordination dissolving into chaos. Across the galaxy, billions of converted beings suddenly found themselves free from the collective consciousness that had enslaved them. As their own ship's systems failed around them, Finn pulled Solaris close. Was it worth it? He asked softly. All of this. Her skin glowed with the most beautiful pattern he'd ever seen, love, mixed with triumph. Every moment. Raven's voice cut through their moment. As touching as this is, you might want to look outside. Through the viewport, they saw ships approaching, not Nexus vessels, but small craft from Earth. Someone down there had been watching, understanding, and had decided to take humanity's first real step into the galactic community. Well, Finn grinned as their ship was taken in tow. I guess I won't have to pretend to be a crazy inventor anymore. No, Solaris agreed, her hand finding his. Now you can be something much more interesting, a bridge between worlds. As they were guided back to Earth, Finn realized that what had started with a simple repair job had ended up fixing something far bigger, the broken pieces of a galaxy torn apart by fear of difference and change. The universe, he had learned, didn't need optimization. It needed understanding, acceptance, and most importantly, love that transcended the boundaries of species and space itself. And somewhere in the vast darkness between the stars, the last echoes of the Nexus consciousness experienced something entirely new, the chaotic, beautiful freedom of individual thought, and perhaps, the first glimmer of understanding why organic life fought so hard to remain beautifully, perfectly imperfect.